Welcome to Daily Scripture Reading. I do not own the rights to this music. 1 Kings chapter 7. This is the Amplified Version. Solomon's Palace. Now Solomon built his own palace, in 13 years, and he finished all of his house in that time. He also built the house of the forest of Lebanon. Its length was 100 cubits, 150 feet. Its width 50 cubits, 75 feet, and its height 30 cubits, 45 feet, upon 4 rows of cedar pillars, with cedar beams upon the pillars, and it was covered with cedar as a roof on the supporting beams that were upon the 45 pillars, 15 in each row. There were artistic window frames in 3 rows, and window was opposite window in 3 tiers. All the doorways and doorposts and windows had squared artistic frames, and window was opposite window in 3 tiers. He also made the hall of pillars. Its length was 50 cubits, 75 feet, and its width 30 cubits, 45 feet. There was a porch in front and pillars and a threshold in front of them. He made the hall for the throne where he was to judge. The hall of judgment, it was paneled with cedar from one floor to another floor. His house where he was to live, the other courtyard behind the hall, was of similar workmanship. Solomon also made a house like this hall for Pharaoh's daughter, whom he had married. All these were of expensive stones, of stone cut according to measure, sawed with saws, inside and outside, even from the foundation to the coping, and from the outside to the great courtyard. The foundation was of expensive stones, large stones, stones of 10 cubits and stones of 8 cubits. And above the foundation were expensive stones, stones cut according to measure, and cedar. So the great courtyard all around had 3 rows of cut stone, and a row of cedar beams like the inner courtyard of the house of the Lord, and the porch of the house. Hiram's work in the temple. Now King Solomon sent word and brought Hiram, a skilled craftsman from Tyre. He was the son of a widow from the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a man of Tyre, a craftsman in bronze. Hiram was filled with wisdom, understanding, and skill for doing any kind of work in bronze. So he came to King Solomon and did all his bronze work. He cast the 2 pillars of bronze. The one pillar was 18 cubits high, and a measuring line of 12 cubits measured the circumference of both. He also made 2 capitals, crowns of cast bronze, to put on the tops of the pillars. The height of one capital was 5 cubits, and the height of the other capital was 5 cubits. There were nets of network, lattice work, and twisted threads, reefs of chain work for the capitals which were on the tops of the pillars, 7 for one capital and 7 for the other. So Hiram made the pillars in this manner, and 2 rows around on the one network to cover the capitals which were on the top of the pomegranates, and he did the same for the other capital. The capitals which were upon the top of the pillars in the porch were of lily work, design 4 cubits. The capitals were on the 2 pillars, and also above and close to the rounded projection, which was beside the network. There were 200 pomegranates in rows around both capitals. Hiram set up the pillars at the porch of the temple. He set up the right pillar and named it Jachin, may he establish. And he set up the left pillar and named it Boaz, in its strength. On the tops of the pillars was lily work, design. So the work of the pillars was finished. Now he made the sea basin of cast metal, 10 cubits from brim to brim, circular in form, 5 cubits high and 30 cubits in circumference. Under its brim were gourds encircling it 10 to a cubit, completely surrounding the sea. The gourds were in 2 rows, cast in one piece with it. It stood on 12 oxen, 3 facing north, 3 west, 3 south, and 3 east. The sea was set on top of them, and all their rear parts pointed inward. It was a hand-width thick, and its brim was made like the brim of a cup, like a lily blossom. It held 2,000 baths. Then Hiram made 10 bronze stands for smaller basins. The length of each stand was 4 cubits. Its width was 4 cubits, and its height was 3 cubits. This was the design of the stands. They had borders between the frames. On the borders between the frames were lions, oxen, and cherubim. And on the frames there was a pedestal above. Beneath the lions and oxen were borders of hanging work. Now each stand had 4 bronze wheels with bronze axles, and its 4 feet had supports for a basin. Beneath the basin were cast supports with borders at each side. Its opening inside the crown at the top measured a cubit, and its opening was round like the design of a pedestal, a cubit and a half. Also on its opening were carvings, and their borders were square, not round. Underneath the borders were 4 wheels, and the axles of the wheels were on the stand, and the height of a wheel was a cubit and a half. The wheels were made like a chariot wheel. Their axles, their rims, their spokes, and their hubs were all cast. Now there were 4 supports at the 4 corners of each stand. The supports were part of the stand itself. On the top of the stand there was a circular piece, half a cubit high, and on the top of the stand its supports and borders were part of it. And on the surface of its supports and its borders Hiram engraved cherubim, lions, and palm-shaped decorations, according to the available space for each, with borders all around. He made the 10 stands like this. They all had 1 casting, 1 measure, and 1 form. Then he made 10 basins of bronze. Each basin held 40 baths and was 4 cubits, and there was 1 basin on each of the 10 stands. Then he placed the bases, 5 on the right or south side of the house, and 5 on the left or north side. And he set the sea of cast metal on the right side of the house toward the southeast. Now Hiram made the basins and the shovels and the bowls. So Hiram finished all the work which he did for King Solomon on the house of the Lord. The 2 pillars and the 2 bowls of the capitals which were on the top of the 2 pillars, and the 2 networks to cover the 2 bowls of the capitals which were on top of the pillars, and the 400 pomegranates for the 2 networks, 2 rows of pomegranates for each network to cover the 2 bowls of the capitals that were on the tops of the pillars. The 10 stands and the 10 basins on the stands, 1 sea basin, and the 12 oxen under the sea, the pails, the shovels, and the bowls, all these utensils which Hiram made for King Solomon in the house of the Lord were of polished bronze. In the plain of the Jordan River, the king cast them in the clay ground between Succoth and Zarethan. Solomon left all the utensils unweighed because there were so many. The weight of the bronze could not be determined. Solomon made all the other furniture which was in the house of the Lord, the incense altar of gold, the table of gold on which was the bread of the presence, the lampstands of pure gold, 5 on the right side and 5 on the left, in front of the Holy of Holies, inner sanctuary, with the flowers, the lamps, and the tongues of gold, the cups, snuffers, bowls, spoons, fire pans of pure gold, and the hinges of gold, both for the doors of the inner house, the Holy of Holies, and for the doors of the house, the main room, the holy place. So all the work that King Solomon did on the house of the Lord was completed. Solomon brought in the things which David his father had dedicated, the silver, the gold, and the utensils. He put them in the treasures of the Lord's house. The end. God bless you, and thank you for joining me today.